Princess Liara of Zithra sat on her polished crystal throne, her eyes fixed on the large viewing window before her. Outside, the sky shimmered with colors she had seen every day of her life, yet it felt different today. The Council of Elders had summoned her here, and she knew exactly why. Princess Liara, Elder Varric began, his voice smooth but cold. The court has grown tired of waiting. Your condition has become a concern for the legacy of Zithra. Liara's hands clenched in her lap. She had heard this countless times before. The whispers, the pointing, the subtle sneers from the nobles who considered her less than perfect because she could not produce an heir. On Zithra, fertility was not merely personal, it was political, a measure of a family's strength. And so, Varric continued, a solution has been found. One that honors your position while addressing the situation. Liara raised an eyebrow, suspicion sharpening her gaze. I am listening. Elder Varric gestured to a holographic display that shimmered into existence above the throne room floor. An image of a human man appeared. He looked ordinary, nothing like the tall, regal Zitherans she was used to. This, Varric said with a hint of mockery in his tone, is Captain Ethan Vance, a human from the distant planet Earth. He will be your partner. Liara blinked. My partner? Her voice was steady, but inside a storm of anger and disbelief brewed. Humans were considered weak, unpredictable, and primitive. To be paired with one as a solution to her infertility was not an honor. It was an insult. Varric's eyes glinted. Think of it as an opportunity, Princess. Perhaps the human can teach you new ways. Or perhaps... He let the sentence hang, a subtle implication of their amusement. Perhaps you will inspire him as he will inspire you. Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. The elders and nobles chuckled softly behind her, a sound that cut sharper than any blade. She stood abruptly, her voice rising. I am not a toy to be given away for amusement. I am Princess Liara of Zithra. Do you think I would accept such mockery? But no one answered. The council had already made their decision. Today she would leave her home, not as a dignitary on a diplomatic mission, but as a pawn in their game. Later that day, Liara was escorted to the spaceport, her elegant gown flowing behind her. Her mind raced with anger, disbelief, and a bitter sense of humiliation. The humans arrived in a sleek metal vessel, far simpler than Zithran ships, but functional. Ethan Vance stepped out to greet her. He was tall by human standards, with brown hair, steady eyes, and an air of calm confidence. He bowed slightly, unsure of protocol but wanting to show respect. Princess Liara, he said politely, his voice clear and measured. It is an honor to meet you. Liara studied him, her lips curling in a bitter smile. The honor is debatable, she said. I suppose you have been informed of your role in this arrangement? Ethan nodded slowly. I have. I don't fully understand why I was chosen, but I will do my best to respect you and your people. Her eyes narrowed. Respect? This is not respect. This is mockery. You are being used as a shield for my disgrace, human, and yet here you stand, calm and unknowing. Ethan hesitated, sensing her anger but also recognizing the pain beneath it. I don't wish to hurt you, Princess. I am here to learn and to help where I can. Liara turned away, her long cloak swishing behind her. Then you may begin by following my instructions. Any mistakes and you will answer to the council, not to me. The journey began. The human vessel, though simpler than her own ship, moved through the stars with surprising efficiency. Liara spent much of the trip observing him, noting his adaptability. While he struggled with some alien technology, he found creative solutions using basic tools. It was frustrating to admit, but the human's mind worked differently, innovatively without reliance on advanced systems. At first, Liara kept him at a distance, offering only minimal conversation. She resented his presence and the circumstances that had brought them together. But their paths crossed inevitably during routine tasks. Ethan was polite, attentive, and unafraid of her anger. Where she expected fear or incompetence, she found determination. One evening, while charting a course through an asteroid belt, the vessel's navigation system failed. Sensors flickered, lights dimmed, and the autopilot halted. Panic surged among the human crew, but Ethan remained calm. Using a mix of human ingenuity and improvisation, he manually guided the ship through the dense field, avoiding collisions with near misses that could have destroyed the vessel. Liara watched silently, her arms crossed, an unwilling respect forming. You think luck is enough, she said sharply when the crisis was over. Zithran ships rely on precision and calculation, not guesswork. Ethan smiled faintly. Sometimes luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. I do what I can with what I have. Liara said nothing, turning back to the viewport. She hated to admit it, but the human had done what her people had deemed impossible for someone of his species. And perhaps, she reflected unwillingly, there was something to be learned from him. Days passed. Liara began to notice subtle things about him. The way he treated the crew with fairness, the way he observed the stars with curiosity, the quiet determination that never wavered in the face of danger. In contrast, Zithran nobles often relied on status and rules, not action. Here, in the human's presence, she saw a different kind of strength, unexpected, unpolished, yet effective. One night, as the stars stretched endlessly before them, Ethan spoke softly. "Princess, do you ever wonder if your people truly understand what strength is?" Liara was taken aback by the question. "Strength?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Of course they do. It is measured in intellect, genetics, and skill." Ethan shook his head gently. "I think strength is more than that. It's courage when you feel fear, compassion when others seem weak, and the ability to keep going when everything is against you." Liara looked at him, her chest tightening. There was wisdom in his words, though it was strange to hear it from someone so ordinary. "Perhaps," she said cautiously. "Or perhaps you are merely trying to make yourself feel superior in a place that sees you as inferior." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just see that sometimes the impossible is possible if you are willing to try." Liara turned away, staring out at the galaxy stretching before them. Try as she might, she could not ignore the truth in his words. She had been taught her entire life that her worth was measured by what she could produce, by her ability to follow Zithran expectations. And yet, here was a human, weak by her people's standards, solving problems they could not even imagine. The journey continued, each day testing them in new ways. From rogue meteor storms to malfunctioning engines, from strange alien creatures on minor exploratory missions to sudden communications from Zithran factions, Liara saw a pattern. The human endured. He adapted. He survived. And slowly, Liara began to see that perhaps she too could survive outside the suffocating expectations of her people. Despite herself, she began to speak with him more openly. Small conversations about the stars, about Earth, about what it meant to be human. And though she would never admit it aloud, she began to feel a flicker of something unfamiliar. Trust. On the last day of Part 1, Liara stood once more at the viewport, watching a cluster of distant stars. The cold anger she had felt toward her people and the mocking council had not disappeared, but it had shifted. The human beside her, steady and calm, had shown her another way to see the universe, a way that valued courage, ingenuity, and the heart, as much as skill or genetics. Ethan glanced at her quietly. "You'll be all right, Princess. I think you'll do more than survive. You'll change things." Liara's lips curved into a faint, reluctant smile. "Perhaps," she whispered. "Perhaps." And for the first time in her life, she felt the tiniest spark of hope, not for herself alone, but for the journey ahead, a journey that would challenge everything she had ever known. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the human beside her was proof that even in a galaxy full of perfection, there was room for the impossible. The ship hummed quietly as it glided through the endless darkness of space. Princess Liara had spent nearly a week aboard the human vessel, and although she had learned to tolerate the unusual sounds and basic technology, her pride remained unshaken. She was a princess of Zithra, and being aboard this human ship felt like an insult, yet she could not deny the human captain's skill in keeping the ship safe through the unpredictable routes of the galaxy. Captain Ethan Vance was as calm as ever, reviewing charts and adjusting their course through the dense asteroid belts near the nebula expanse. "We'll have to make a small detour," he said without looking up, "to avoid the cluster that shifted in the last cosmic storm." Liara frowned, studying the holographic map. "Your technology is functional, I suppose, but slow. Our ships could calculate a safer path in half the time." Ethan glanced at her unbothered. "True, but calculations don't always predict the unknown. Sometimes human intuition helps more than precision." Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to dismiss the statement, but deep inside she could not. He had proven it time and time again. When the navigation system failed the previous week, his quick thinking had guided the ship through a near-disastrous asteroid storm. His methods were unorthodox, yet effective. Later that day, a warning blared from the ship's sensors. A rogue fleet of small alien fighters approached rapidly from the nearby star system. The ship shook as it entered a defensive orbit. Liara's pulse quickened. She had been trained for combat strategy and diplomacy. But these were skills meant for a court, not a real-life attack. "Princess, I need you to stay back," Ethan instructed. His voice steady as the crew scrambled to their stations. Liara's hands clenched at her sides. "Stay back? I am not a helpless guest. I can assist." Ethan's eyes met hers, calm but firm. "And yet, this situation requires precision and coordination. Follow my instructions and you will remain safe." "It is not weakness, it is strategy." Liara hesitated. The logic of his words made sense even if it bruised her pride. She stepped to the side, watching intently as the human crew prepared the ship's defenses. The attackers were fast, small craft armed with plasma weapons. The first salvo streaked past, barely missing the ship's hull. Ethan moved quickly, issuing orders with calm authority. "Evasive maneuvers. Shields at 40%. Prepare countermeasures." Liara's eyes widened. The humans were not as advanced as Zitherans, yet their quick thinking and adaptability compensated for technological gaps. One by one, the alien fighters were dodged, trapped in defensive grids, and neutralized. At the end of the encounter, the vessel floated unscathed, the enemy retreating into the darkness. Liara felt a strange sense of awe. "You did it," she said softly. "You survived them all," Ethan shrugged. "We survived, and that's what counts." For the first time, Liara considered that perhaps survival required more than perfection. It required determination, ingenuity, and courage, qualities humans had in abundance. The following days were filled with both routine and unexpected challenges. They passed through regions of space where cosmic storms threatened communications, and Liara observed how Ethan handled every obstacle with calm, methodical focus. He improvised solutions when alien systems failed, often using only basic human tools. One morning, Liara awoke to find Ethan repairing a damaged sensor using a simple set of instruments. She approached, curiosity overcoming her irritation. "Captain, why are you using such primitive tools?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly, not looking up. "Sometimes simplicity is more reliable than complexity. A system built for perfection can fail in unexpected ways. Human tools are adaptable and they get the job done." Liara frowned, studying his hands. They moved with confidence, making adjustments that even her advanced training would have taken hours to calculate. Slowly, a reluctant admiration grew within her. This human, whom she had once dismissed as weak and unworthy, was showing qualities her own people often lacked. Their journey was interrupted when the ship received a distress signal from a nearby uncharted planet. The transmission was faint, distorted by interference, but it carried a clear plea for help. "Should we respond?" Liara asked, her voice firm. "It could be a trap." Ethan hesitated, considering the risks. "It could be, but it could also be someone in need. Humans act on principle, not just strategy. We help when we can." Liara's eyes narrowed. "Principle? Compassion?" She had been raised to value efficiency above all else. Yet something in Ethan's determination sparked a new thought. Perhaps strength was not just about power. It was about choice. They descended to the planet, a wild, untamed world of dense forests, rocky cliffs, and fast-flowing rivers. The distress signal led them to a small alien settlement under siege by a local predator species. Creatures with sharp claws and acidic saliva attacked the settlement's perimeter, and the inhabitants were struggling to survive. Ethan and Liara acted quickly. The human coordinated defenses using simple barricades and traps, while Liara used her Zitharan abilities to distract and repel the predators. Working together, they managed to save the settlement. The alien inhabitants stared at them in awe. "You both saved us," one whispered. "No one has survived an attack like that in generations." Liara felt a strange warmth at the gratitude. The human's courage had made a difference. Perhaps, she thought, the mockery of her own people had blinded her to the real value of partnership. That evening, as they camped near the edge of the forest, Liara spoke softly to Ethan. "You are unlike any being I have met in Zithara. You endure what others fail at, and you find solutions where others see only danger. Ethan shrugged, sitting on a large rock. I don't know if I'm special, I just keep moving forward even when things look hopeless. Liara shook her head. No, that is strength. Not perfection, not power, not status, but persistence. That is something my people lack. They rely on rules, calculations, and appearances. They cannot see what truly matters. Ethan glanced at her, a quiet smile forming. You're learning fast. Humans aren't perfect either, princess. We make mistakes all the time, but we survive and we grow. Perhaps that is why we endure in a galaxy full of perfection. Liara stared into the stars, thinking of her own people back on Zithera. She had been mocked for her inability to conform to expectations, yet here she was, witnessing a human do what Zitherans deemed impossible. She felt a mixture of humility and newfound hope. Perhaps her journey was not about survival alone. It was about discovery. The next leg of their journey took them through the Rift of Shadows, a region of space notorious for its gravitational anomalies and debris fields. Even the most advanced Zitheran ships struggled here. Liara watched as Ethan piloted the human vessel with precision, adjusting thrusters and shields with an almost instinctive understanding of the environment. Do you ever worry? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. Ethan glanced at her. Of course. Fear is natural, but it is what you do with that fear that counts. Liara considered this, her mind replaying every challenge they had faced together. Each obstacle had tested them both, yet the human had met them with ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Slowly, she began to recognize a truth her people had never taught her. Strength was more than physical ability or perfect genetics. It was adaptability, compassion, and the courage to act when others faltered. By the time they emerged from the Rift of Shadows, Liara had changed in subtle ways. She was still proud, still regal, still a princess of Zithera, but her perspective had shifted. She began to speak with Ethan more openly, sharing thoughts about Zitheran politics, her frustrations, and her fears. And Ethan, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of humans' persistence against impossible odds, and of the small victories that defined his species. One night, as they drifted through a quiet sector of space, Liara looked at Ethan and said softly, Perhaps my people were wrong to underestimate humans. Ethan smiled. Perhaps. And perhaps you are beginning to see that strength comes in many forms. Liara nodded, a quiet determination settling within her. The mockery of her people, the humiliation she had felt for years, it still lingered, but it no longer defined her. She had witnessed courage, creativity, and resilience firsthand, and she had begun to embrace the possibility that even someone like her could find new strength in unexpected places. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and with the human captain by her side, Liara felt a spark of something she had never experienced before. Hope. She did not know what awaited them next, but for the first time she was no longer afraid. She was ready to face the galaxy, not as a princess burdened by shame, but as a being capable of growth, learning, and perhaps change. The planet below was alive with colors Liara had never seen before. Towering forests glowed faintly under the twin suns, rivers shimmered like molten silver, and strange creatures flitted between the trees. For the first time, Liara allowed herself a quiet moment of wonder. She had spent her life in the polished halls of Zithera, where perfection was expected and control reigned. Yet here, in this wild, untamed world, she felt something different. Freedom. Beautiful, isn't it? Ethan said from beside her, leaning on the railing of the observation deck. He pointed to a forest canopy that seemed to ripple like waves. Every planet has its own story. Some are gentle, some are dangerous, but all of them teach something if you look closely. Liara nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. She had begun to notice changes within herself, subtle shifts that she could not explain. Her strength felt renewed, her energy more vibrant than it had been in years. She had brushed it off as the excitement of travel and adventure, but now, standing on the edge of the alien world, she could no longer ignore it. The ship descended slowly, landing on a flat clearing near a crystalline lake. The sensors immediately detected strange energy readings coming from beneath the surface. Liara frowned. These readings are unlike anything I have encountered. It could be hazardous. Ethan's eyes lit up with curiosity. Hazardous or not, we should investigate. That's how discoveries are made. Sometimes risk is necessary. Liara hesitated, then nodded. She had learned to trust his judgment in situations where protocol failed. Together, they approached the lake, wearing protective suits designed for unknown environments. The energy readings grew stronger, pulsing beneath the water's surface like a heartbeat. "This is extraordinary," Ethan whispered. "Whatever's down there, it's alive and it's powerful." Liara leaned closer, her hand brushing the surface of the water. A sudden surge of warmth coursed through her body and she stumbled backward. Ethan caught her immediately, steadying her. "Princess, are you all right?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Liara's breath came in sharp bursts. I feel different," she stammered. "Stronger. Alive in a way I have never felt before." Ethan frowned, scanning her with the portable medical device he carried. "This is unusual. Your readings are not consistent with any known Zitharan biology. There's something happening, something new." Liara's heart raced. Could it be? Could the rumors she had feared and denied all her life be changing now? She had always been infertile according to Zitharan science, a fact that had defined her existence and shaped the mockery of the court. And yet now, for reasons she could not explain, she felt a possibility, a spark of life, that had once seemed impossible. Over the next several days, Liara underwent careful examinations. Ethan, fascinated and gentle, observed every change, recording data and comparing it with Zitharan medical protocols. Despite the simplicity of his tools, his insight was remarkable. He noticed patterns and subtle shifts that even advanced Zitharan instruments could not detect. "Princess," he said one evening as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, "I believe what's happening is unprecedented. Something about being with humans, about your interactions and environment, may have triggered a biological transformation. Your body is adapting." Liara's eyes widened. "Are you saying I am what capable?" Ethan nodded slowly. "It appears so. You may no longer be infertile. Your body is responding in ways Zitharan science cannot predict." The realization hit her like a wave. A mix of fear, disbelief, and hope surged through her. She had spent years in shame, scorned by her people for a condition she could not control, and now in the presence of a human she discovered the impossible. She could carry life. "Impossible," she whispered. "It shouldn't be possible." Ethan smiled, his eyes gentle. "Nothing about this universe is impossible. You just needed the right conditions, the right support, and someone who believed in possibilities rather than limitations." Liara felt tears prick at her eyes. She had never allowed herself to hope, never dared to imagine a life where she could be whole in the way her people defined. Yet now hope was no longer a dream. It was real. Word of her transformation reached the Zitharan court faster than she expected. Communications came in bursts, some polite, some angry, some mocking. The nobles were stunned, unable to reconcile their rigid beliefs with the undeniable fact. Princess Liara was no longer infertile. Varric's voice came through the holographic communicator, sharp and disbelieving. "This is absurd. Humans cannot influence Zitharan biology. It is impossible." Liara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Apparently, Elder Varric, the impossible is merely undiscovered." The council erupted in debate, some claiming scandal, others claiming miracle. Liara listened quietly, her resolve growing. For the first time, she realized that her value was not determined by her people's expectations, nor by what they considered perfect. Her value came from her choices, her courage, and now the life she could carry, a life that no one had thought possible. Ethan remained at her side through it all. His calm, unwavering support became her anchor. While the nobles argued, he focused on practical matters, ensuring her health, guiding her through the necessary preparations, and sharing quiet moments of conversation that reminded her she was more than a princess defined by shame. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Liara turned to him. "Ethan, you have changed everything. My life, my body, my future. How can I ever repay you?" Ethan shook his head gently. "You don't need to repay me. You are discovering your own strength. I am just here to help you see it." Liara's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. For the first time in her life, she felt not fear or shame, but possibility. She could shape her own destiny, and perhaps even change the destiny of her people. Their journey back to Zithara was tense. Rumors of Liara's transformation preceded them, and the political climate was volatile. Some factions saw her return as a threat, others as a beacon of hope. Liara was aware that her position was no longer simply ceremonial. She had become a symbol, a challenge to rigid tradition. Yet she faced the challenge with newfound confidence. She had survived the unexpected, embraced the impossible, and discovered a new strength within herself. She would not allow fear or shame to dictate her future any longer. Ethan piloted the ship steadily, navigating political and spatial obstacles alike. Liara observed the stars with a quiet determination, thinking not of ridicule but of possibility. The child growing within her, human and Zitharan, was more than a miracle. It was a symbol of unity, of resilience, and of the power of courage and choice. During a quiet moment, Liara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of her home, of the court that had mocked her, and of the expectations that had weighed heavily on her shoulders. Yet she also thought of the human beside her, of the lessons she had learned from him, that strength was not measured by genetics alone, that courage could defy the impossible, and that even in the face of ridicule, hope could flourish. She felt a wave of gratitude, not just toward Ethan but toward herself. She had embraced change, risk, and the unknown. She had allowed herself to grow, and in doing so, had discovered something no one had expected: the capacity to create life, to defy expectation, and to shape her own destiny. As Zithara came into view, its shimmering cities and proud towers rising from the landscape, Liara felt a mixture of anticipation and determination. The court awaited her return, expecting shame and scandal. Instead, she would arrive transformed, not only in body but in spirit. The impossible had been achieved. She was no longer a princess defined by mockery and infertility. She was a symbol of courage, hope, and the power of unexpected change. And she was ready to show her people what true strength really meant. Ethan glanced at her quietly. "Are you ready?" he asked. Liara nodded, her eyes firm and determined. "Yes, let them see the truth. Let them see that strength is not just what they expect, but what we create together." The stars stretched endlessly around them as the ship descended toward Zithara. For Liara, the journey was only beginning. The challenges ahead would test her, as they had before. But now she was ready, not as a pawn of mockery, but as a living testament to the impossible, and as a mother-to-be who would change everything. The Zitharan capital shimmered beneath the twin suns, its towers gleaming like polished crystals. From orbit, the city looked perfect, an image of order, precision, and pride. Yet beneath the shining surface, tension ran deep. The court had received word of Princess Liara's return, and the news of her transformation had spread like wildfire. Ethan piloted the ship with steady hands, guiding them through the orbital gates. Liara stood beside him, her posture regal, her expression calm yet fierce. Gone was the uncertainty that had marked her first days among humans. She was now a symbol of change, of unexpected strength, and of the power that humans had helped awaken within her. "Are you ready for what awaits?" Ethan asked quietly. Liara nodded, her jaw firm. "I am no longer afraid. Whatever they think, whatever they say, I am no longer their pawn." The ship touched down in the grand docking bay, its engines whirring to a gentle stop. Courtiers, advisors, and guards lined the walls, whispers flowing like currents through the crowd. Some faces reflected shock, others disbelief, and a few carefully concealed respect. None of them had expected Liara to return transformed. As she stepped onto the platform, the murmurs grew louder. Liara held her head high, her eyes scanning the assembly. Elder Varric's expression was one of thinly veiled outrage. The council had assumed she would return humiliated, infertile, and obedient. Instead, she returned strong, confident, and carrying life within her. A hush fell over the hall as Liara's gaze swept across the audience. "I have returned," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "And I bring with me a truth that cannot be denied." Varric's voice cut through the silence, sharp and accusing. "Princess, you have defied Zitharan science, our expectations. Liara lifted her hand, silencing him with a calm authority that surprised even herself. "I have done nothing but live. I have faced challenges, dangers, and the unknown. And I have discovered what humans know. Strength is not measured by perfection, genetics, or status. Strength is courage, resilience, and the ability to overcome the impossible." The hall erupted in whispers, some skeptical, some awed. For generations, Zitharans had relied on rules, calculations, and rigid traditions. None had imagined that life could emerge outside those confines. And yet here she stood, proof that possibilities beyond expectation existed. Varric's anger flared. "And what do you propose, Princess? That we abandon Zithran science? That we bow to human folly?" Liara met his gaze steadily. "I propose that we recognize truth. I am no longer infertile. I carry life, human life, intertwined with Zithran. This is not folly. It is proof that strength can take many forms and that rigid thinking can blind even the most advanced civilization." A murmur ran through the council. Some elders looked at each other nervously, unsure how to respond. Others began to see opportunity, a way to expand Zithra's influence, to embrace new possibilities that could strengthen their society. Ethan stepped forward beside Liara, calm and confident. "Princess Liara's discovery is remarkable. I have witnessed her courage, intelligence, and adaptability firsthand. This is a moment for celebration, not ridicule." Varric's eyes narrowed. "You humans speak as though your presence has changed her. What proof do you offer?" Liara raised her hand, a subtle but undeniable glow radiating from within her. "The proof is me and the life growing within me. It is undeniable, unarguable, and undeniable evidence that humans and Zithrans together can achieve what was once thought impossible." The room fell into stunned silence. Whispers turned to speculation, then to awe. The impossible had become reality, and no argument could erase the truth. Over the following days, Liara's return sparked both celebration and controversy. Citizens marveled at her courage and the miracle she carried, while traditionalists struggled to accept a human-Zithran hybrid as a legitimate symbol of power. Yet Liara remained steadfast. She met with council members, spoke with the people, and demonstrated not only her strength but also her wisdom. Ethan remained quietly supportive, offering guidance and encouragement without overshadowing her authority. Together, they navigated political tensions, proving that partnership, respect, and ingenuity were as vital as any tradition. During one assembly, a council elder asked pointedly, "Princess, do you truly intend to raise this child among humans and Zithrans alike?" Liara's gaze swept across the room. "Yes, the child will carry the strengths of both species. It will symbolize unity, courage, and resilience, and it will remind Zithra that growth comes not from rigid rules, but from adaptability, compassion, and vision." The audience murmured in surprise. Some nodded, impressed by her clarity and authority. Others whispered doubts, unsure if tradition could bend to the demands of a new reality. Liara also faced personal challenges. The nobles who had mocked her now sought either favor or alliance, unsure whether to embrace or oppose her. She navigated these interactions with calm precision, never letting anger dictate her actions. She had survived space storms, alien predators, and uncertainty. Now she faced her greatest trial, changing the minds of those who clung to old beliefs. One evening, as the twin suns set over the glittering capital, Liara and Ethan walked along the palace gardens. The air was sweet with alien flora, and the city below buzzed with a mixture of awe and tension. "Princess," Ethan said softly, "you've done what none of them expected. You've returned not as a pawn, but as a leader. How do you feel?" Liara paused, her eyes reflecting the twin suns. "Stronger. Not because of what I carry, but because of what I've learned. Humans taught me courage, patience, and resilience, and now I understand that strength is not inherited, it is forged." Ethan nodded. "And what about the child?" Liara smiled gently. "The child will be a bridge between worlds, a reminder that unity and courage can overcome expectation, a new legacy for Zithra." The council eventually convened to formally address Liara's return. The session was tense, with debates lasting hours. Some elders argued that she had violated Zithran principles. Others insisted that her experience offered a chance to strengthen the civilization. Liara listened patiently, her mind clear and focused. When the time came, she stood before them, her voice unwavering. Zithra has always prided itself on perfection, but perfection without courage, without adaptability, without the willingness to face the unknown, is empty. I have faced fear. I have endured the impossible, and I carry life where once there was none. This is not shame, it is strength, and it is proof that humans and Zithrans together can achieve what neither could alone. The hall fell silent. Slowly, nods appeared among some council members, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Liara's message had been received. Change was possible, and strength came in many forms. Even Varric, who had been the most vocal critic, finally spoke. "Perhaps Perhaps there is truth in what you say. Perhaps we have underestimated the power of resilience and partnership. Liara inclined her head. It is not too late to learn, to grow, to embrace the impossible. Zithra can become stronger, not by clinging to rigid rules, but by learning from courage and adaptability wherever it appears. By the end of the week, Liara had reclaimed her place in the court, not as a princess defined by mockery, but as a figure of respect, admiration, and inspiration. Her story spread throughout Zithra, inspiring citizens and changing perceptions. The impossible had become reality, and a new chapter in the civilization's history had begun. Ethan remained quietly at her side, a constant reminder that courage, ingenuity, and humanity could overcome even the strictest expectations. Together they had faced the unknown, survived the impossible, and returned to Zithra stronger than ever. Liara reflected on her journey. She had left Zithra mocked and shamed, but she had returned transformed. She had discovered the impossible, embraced courage, and found strength in partnership. And now, carrying life that neither species had thought possible, she was ready to face the future, not as a victim of expectation, but as a mother, a leader, and a symbol of hope. The twin suns set over the capital, casting long golden shadows over the city. Liara stood on the balcony of the royal palace, her gaze firm and steady. The council had been challenged, tradition questioned, and perception forever changed. For Princess Liara, the impossible had become her reality. And with the child she carried, the future of Zithra and the galaxy would never be the same. The palace of Zithra glowed under the light of the twin suns, its towers reflecting 1,000 colors across the city below. Princess Liara walked through the grand halls with calm determination. She was no longer the princess who had been mocked, humiliated, and dismissed. She was a symbol of courage, change, and hope. Yet beneath her calm exterior, Liara felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. The time had come. The life growing within her, the impossible child, a combination of human and Zithran, was ready to enter the world. She felt a surge of both fear and joy. This child was more than a miracle. It was a bridge between species, a promise of unity and proof that determination and courage could overcome every expectation. Ethan stood beside her as they entered the birthing chamber. The humans and Zithran aides had worked together to create a safe and technologically advanced environment, combining the best of both worlds. Despite the scientific support, Ethan's presence offered Liara something more: reassurance, calm, and the steady strength she had come to rely on. "You're ready," Ethan said softly, placing a hand over hers. "And so am I. We'll face this together." Liara nodded. "I know, it is time." The process was long and challenging. Zithran medicine was precise, structured, and focused on efficiency, while Ethan relied on human intuition, calm presence, and careful observation. Together they guided Liara through the experience, blending science, strategy, and empathy. Liara focused on her breathing, listening to Ethan's steady voice and feeling the connection they shared. Despite the pain, she remained composed, a combination of human resilience and Zithran strength guiding her. Every contraction, every moment of uncertainty, was met with courage. She had faced space storms, alien predators, and the impossible journey to self-discovery. She could face this. Hours passed. Finally, with a cry that echoed through the chamber, the child emerged. Small, perfect, and alive, it was a miracle that bridged two worlds. The nurses and aides, human and Zithran alike, paused, stunned by the reality of what they had witnessed. Liara held the child in her arms, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. Ethan knelt beside her, his hand gently brushing her shoulder. "It's perfect," he whispered, a true symbol of unity. Liara looked down at the tiny being, its small hands curling instinctively around hers. "Yes," she said softly. "Perfect, in ways no one could have imagined." News of the birth spread quickly throughout Zithra. The court had prepared for skepticism and scandal, but none could deny what they saw. Liara had returned with life where once there was none, challenging every expectation, defying every rule, and inspiring awe across the planet. Citizens came to witness the new child, bringing gifts and messages of admiration. Scholars and leaders debated the implications, realizing that the hybrid child represented a new era of cooperation, innovation, and hope. Even Elder Varric, once her harshest critic, looked upon the child with a quiet respect, recognizing that life had a way of transcending rules and expectations. Liara addressed the court for the first time since the birth. Her voice was strong, calm, and filled with authority. This child is more than my own. It is a promise to Zithra and to the galaxy. A promise that courage, partnership, and hope can overcome limitations. A promise that strength is not defined by perfection alone, but by resilience, compassion, and choice. The room was silent. Slowly, applause began to fill the hall, first cautious, then enthusiastic. Liara's words had struck a chord. For centuries, Zithra had measured value by genetics, rules, and tradition. Now, a new standard had emerged: courage, adaptability, and the ability to embrace the impossible. Over the following days, Liara and Ethan worked together to show the people of Zithra the value of unity. They introduced cooperative projects combining human creativity with Zithran technology. Cities flourished as ideas flowed freely between species, blending ingenuity, adaptability, and precision. Liara's leadership became an example of what could be achieved when fear and rigidity were replaced with courage and collaboration. Citizens looked to her not as a princess defined by mockery or shame, but as a symbol of strength, vision, and hope. Ethan continued to support her quietly, always beside her, offering advice, encouragement, and practical knowledge. Together they formed a partnership built not on tradition or expectation, but on trust, respect, and shared purpose. One evening, as Liara rocked her child gently in her arms, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the ridicule, the shame, and the feeling of being powerless in her own court. She remembered the long voyage through space, the challenges they had faced, and the lessons she had learned from a human who refused to give up. And now, she realized, she had transformed not only herself but her world. Zithra was no longer the same planet she had left behind. Its people had begun to understand that strength was not only measured by rules and genetics, but by courage, resilience, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. The child stirred, small eyes opening to the vast new world around it. Liara smiled, brushing a lock of hair from its forehead. "You are our future," she whispered. "A future where courage, unity, and hope guide us all." Ethan sat beside her, gazing at the child with quiet pride. "And we will guide them together," he said. Liara nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. She had survived mockery, humiliation, and the impossible. She had embraced change, courage, and partnership. And now, as a mother, she held the living proof of that journey in her arms. In the following months, Liara's influence spread beyond the palace walls. Citizens from across Zithra sought her guidance, inspired by her courage and leadership. Scholars studied the hybrid child, eager to learn from the combination of human and Zithran traits. Leaders began to value creativity and compassion alongside skill and tradition. Even former critics began to acknowledge the truth. Liara's journey had changed Zithra forever. The impossible had become reality, and the planet was stronger for it. Liara continued to nurture her child, teaching lessons not only in survival and intelligence, but in courage, empathy, and adaptability. She instilled the values that humans had shown her: resilience, partnership, and the power to overcome impossible odds. The child would grow knowing that strength was not defined by expectation alone, but by heart, mind, and action. Years later, the child stood alongside Liara, tall and curious, ready to learn the ways of both species. Citizens marveled at the blend of human creativity and Zithran intellect embodied in the child. Liara smiled proudly, knowing that the future she had fought for, and the life she had been gifted, was now in capable hands. Ethan watched quietly, a steady presence, knowing that the child represented not only the legacy of their journey, but the possibilities that arose when courage met opportunity. Together they had proven that the impossible could be achieved, that unity could surpass division, and that hope could change even the most rigid of worlds. The twin suns rose over Zithra, casting warm light across the capital city. Liara stood on the balcony of the palace, holding her child close, feeling the steady heartbeat of life and possibility. The future stretched endlessly before them, full of challenges, wonders, and opportunities, and this time she was ready. She whispered to the child, You are our legacy, our bridge, our hope. May you always remember that courage, resilience, and love are stronger than fear, doubt, or ridicule. The city below stirred with life, citizens moving with renewed purpose, inspired by the journey of one princess who had dared to defy expectation. Liara and Ethan stood together, the bond between human and Zitharan stronger than ever, a testament to the power of unity. The impossible had become reality. A new legacy had begun, and Zithara and the galaxy would never be the same.